right. Well, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us again. Very cold Friday afternoon, but we're very close to that finish line. And again, thank you for joining us. And this is the part two of the Notebook LM series. No, it wasn't last week. It was a few weeks ago. We had part one, and I had a lot of good feedback from some of you who were there. And I said, well, we need a part two because I'm sure some of you who were there might have tried and done some spectacular work on Notebook LM. And so I also, want to hear from you all, what have you done? And so feel free to jump in. I'm going to do a little quick recap of what we did last week. And then we'll just jump in on some of the new things. And like I predicted on our part one, I did say there were going to be new features in Notebook LM and to not a big surprise because again they Google has been adding new features to the Notebook LM ever since, and so I would be happy to go over some of the new features that they've added since we last met for part one, and we can talk about that. And I also, want to open up the room just to hear any thoughts or ideas of how can we utilize this tool and maybe reimagine some of the traditional assessments that we currently have in our classroom, or in what ways can we leverage this new technology? So with that, let me just do a little quick recap of what we spoke about a few weeks ago when we did part one. Um, oh, there's a few more people here. Let me just let everyone in. Oh, you know what, Lizette? I'm gonna make you co-host so that you can help me out with those who are still trying to get in.
Sure.
I forgot to do that. My apologies. Let me just stop sharing for a moment. Okay, so Lizette, you're a co-host. Thank you. And that's Lizette. She's a member of our team at City Tech at the Academic Technologies and Online Learning. So Lizette's been wonderful. So she's going to be handling the chat as well as allowing everyone to come into the space. Okay, so let's go back to my slides. Like I said, I felt part one was such a, was a, I just got a strong response from everyone, and everyone who attended, shared with me some people shared with me what they were doing with Notebook LM. I thought that was fascinating. So, we needed a part two. But I also want to let you know that this is my email address. If ever want to reach out and say hi or maybe collaborate in any ways. I'm a big uh, fan of collaboration. Anytime someone has a great idea, I love to help and work with some other people. And so feel free to reach out. And that's my email address at City Tech. And I am the Director of Academic Technologies and Online Learning at City Tech, A2L, or some people call us ATOL. And also you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to, if you want to you know, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also there, so I'll be happy to start a conversation with anyone. So real quickly, these are some of the features that we talked about in part one. And just to recap, I just wanted to talk about what we did in part one and not take up too much of the time. And so let me switch back to my Notebook LM screen. By the way, if you don't know how to access Notebook LM, if you already have a Google account, you can simply go into your Google account. Let's say I'm here on my email. You can just go into the little we call it the waffle icon next to your name here at the top right-hand corner, and as you scroll down, you'll see Notebook LM. It reminds me of there's another logo that looks very familiar, and I'm blanking right now. But if anyone knows who I'm talking about, but there's a logo that looks very similar. I'm not sure it's Macmillan or one of those that have this kind of like kind of logo. But you do need to have a Google account. So. Without the Google account, you won't have access, and it's free. Or you can have a free account and be able to utilize Notebook LM. And this is how it looks like when you land on their homepage. And so it's a little busy to my liking, but here at the top, you will find featured notebooks. And then at the bottom, pretty much some of my notebooks that I created. And from part one, I was using this following notebook here. And I explained a little bit how it's split up into three screens. On the left-hand side is where you add your sources to this notebook. And we talked about garbage in, garbage out. The quality of your knowledge base is very important because this is where you're grounding, right? This is where you're training the brain based on the sources that you add into the notebook. And so here, I believe with the free account, you are limited to 50 sources, which is a lot. I don't think anyone here would probably use more than 50, but depends on the research, right? If you're doing more deep research, you might. Um, but the good thing is that you can always create a new notebook, right? So you can create a new notebook, and therefore, if you reach a maximum of the 50 sources, maybe it's time for you to bring some of that over into a new notebook. Um, and then at the middle of the screen is where you interact or chat with your notebook, right? And with the knowledge that you've ingest into this notebook. And then at the right-hand side of the screen, this is where the magic happens, right? This is where we were talking. This is where we spent a good amount of time at our last workshop is these features over here. And I believe we were at around 7 of these features. But look, there's a new one here, and I predicted that in part one that there was by the time that we have our next workshop, they were going to have some new features. And guess what? They have a new one, and it's very exciting. I just tried it this morning. I haven't looked at it yet, so I'll be as surprised as you are. It took a while to generate, but it's the slide deck. So the slide deck pretty much creates a whole slide deck or slides for you based on the information that you ingest into your notebook. And the notebook that I'm currently using right now is I did a notebook on scaffolding assignments. That's the same one we use in part one. Um, and uh, and so as you can see, we in part one we tested the audio overview, right? That's the dive into a podcast. We also talked about the explainer videos, which is amazing because for me, I come from a media background and I know how long it takes to produce these videos. And when I saw this feature, I was pretty much blown off. I was blown away because I remember how hard I worked to produce some of these videos, and it just did it for me. And the most surprising part was I thought this is where I thought it was going to fail, which was when it puts the graphics on the screen. I didn't think they would sync up with the audio, and it did a phenomenal job at syncing audio with the visual graphics, and it pretty much follows the rules that we the multimedia rules on rules we should follow, cognitive overload, not to put too much on the screen at one time, too wordy. But I'll show you in a few seconds. We also talked about the mind map. We talked about the reporting. We talked about the flashcards, the quiz feature, infographics, and now we have the slide deck. And if you weren't there for the part one, I was then taking some of these course materials and I was bringing them into Brightspace. So let me show you that real quick. I thought I had Brightspace open. Let me just, oh, I do have Brightspace open. Okay, so just real quick, we were taking a lot of those materials from Notebook LM and I was going into my course and I had created a folder and I titled it Notebook LM. And then I had brought in a lot of those assets, course materials into my Brightspace course. Um, and here it was, here's the video and so this was created completely on Notebook LM based on the content that I use as a source. And real quick, I'll play a few seconds of it just to recap.
If you're an educator, you know this moment. A student is staring at a blank page, just stuck. Well, today we're talking about the one tool that can help break down that wall, writing scaffolds. We're going to explore how these temporary supports can build something truly permanent: skill, confidence, and of course, independence. So here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle that all too common problem, the writer's wall. Then we'll get into what scaffolding really is, talk about 4 huge benefits, and walk through a 5-step guide to put it all into practice. We'll even give you a toolkit of strategies you can use. And finally,
So this is the point I was making, is that you can clearly see that the graphics are really well done and they sync really well with the speaker. I thought this is where this AI was going to fail, is just these graphics, and they're really well done. And I feel they're not overload, cognitive overload the way that these graphics are designed. So that blew me away, and this was done in a matter of seconds for me. A Notebook LM. The other one we talked about, and this is the one that blew us most of us away, which kind of like, oh my gosh, if the explainers videos weren't enough, the deep dive one was really scary. Let me just quickly showcase that before we move on. I just want to, for those who weren't there, but the audio overview is this one. And what we did was it basically we asked Notebook LM to take the knowledge base that we had created in our notebook and then create a podcast, or like like a podcast overview. But then we went a step above, and then what we did was then we interrupt the host, and then we asked questions. Remember, I was trying to figure out if we can order pizza from Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn, or something like that, right? And so here, let me show you that real quick. This is the one that really blew me away as well. It's a tie between this one and the explainer videos. And so here I
if you've
will.
ever walked past a big construction site, you always see it, right? That metal grid around the building.
The scaffolding.
The scaffolding, exactly. It lets the workers get to all the tricky spots.
So it's a regular podcast. It's between, you see, there's two people speaking, and it sounds very natural and it sounds very human. But then when you click on the interactive button, everything changes now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, demo that real quick. So I'm going to hit interactive, and it has a little hand icon, like it's almost like picture a student raising their hand, asking a question. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to demonstrate. We're going to raise our hand. We're going to interrupt the host and ask our question. The host will pause answer the question, and then continue on with the podcast. All right, so let's give that a try. And so it takes us to this new window, and at the bottom center, there is a little play audio button, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Once I hit play, you'll begin to, the two hosts will begin to speak, and then over here, I'll have an opportunity to raise my hand and ask the question.
If you've ever walked past a big construction site, you always see it, right? That metal grid around the building.
The scaffolding.
The scaffolding, exactly. It lets the workers get to all the tricky spots, the high up places safely.
And that's the perfect way to think about what we're talking about in this deep dive. Scaffolding in writing.
Same.
Oh, hey, welcome. What's up?
Yes, I have a question. I'm a bit confused as what do you mean by scaffolding? Is that scaffolding when you're working on a building, or that's some other type of scaffolding that you're describing? Oops. I I I have a question. What type of scaffolding are you referring to? You're talking about scaffolding for a new building, or you're talking about another type of scaffolding?
That is a wonderful question.
Okay, let's unpack this.
We are using the construction scaffolding.
The one you see on the outside of a building.
Yes, as a metaphor for something in education.
We're talking about scaffolding in writing.
Scaffolding and writing instruction, to be specific.
It's the same.
Yep, go on.
Sorry to interrupt again, but can you tell me a little bit about where can I find the best pizza in downtown Brooklyn?
We appreciate the question. True.
Yeah, we love a good slice of pizza.
Doesn't. That said, our deep dive today is hyper-focused on educational structures.
Scaffolding, teaching strategy.
So we're going to have to stick to that topic for now.
We want to make sure we give you the full context of this idea.
Maybe later we can talk about.
So, I try to divert the conversation over to pizza, but it brought us back into the conversation of scaffolding. So that's really fascinating, and I can see so many ways that we as educators can use this tool, not only for students interacting with their own notes. If students use Notebook.lm as a way to take notes in the classroom, and then after the notes are ingested as sources to ground the brain, then you can interact by going back here to the studio and then producing these assets. From the professor's point of view, we can take these assets, such as the one that we just did right now, which is the podcast, and then here you can just click more, click share, and once you click share, you can then copy the link, right? You can control also the privacy, who gets to see this, right? You can say you're only allowing them access to this portion or the entire notebook, right? So you can control that here. But once you copy the link to that podcast, I can take it right over into my Brightspace course, go over here, click create a link, paste the URL, and I can give this a title, lecture podcast, right? And so then once I hit create, that now links to my Notebook.lm as a way, as an asset or course material for your course on Brightspace. But I see this more of a I think pushing the envelope to more assessments, I think is more fun, where I can see students, and I used this example in part one, last workshop. I talked about how we can use this as maybe a midterm review, right? We talked about how you can create a notebook. You, the professor, creates a notebook. We'll call it midterm review. We can then share that notebook with all the students in your class, and now they have access to the notebook. Instead of you painting the fence, and they'll let you paint the fence on your own, instead of you running a midterm review, you can maybe ask the students to then contribute sources, their own notes, any type of source that they feel will help each other pass the exam, bring that into that notebook. They're all working together collaboratively. And then now you can now go back into, the students can go into the studio, create flashcards, create quizzes, create a mind map, create a report for study guides, a plan. So there's many ways that this could be used for better strategies on studying, because most students, unfortunately, what they see as studying is cramming, and it's the day before or 2 days before the big exam, and then just a huge amount of time spent on cramming before the exam, and those are not best practices, best way to study. And so, you want to do recall, you want to do spatial learning, you want to allow your mind to forget something and then recall to strengthen those memories from short-term memory to long-term memory, right? So those are the better ways of studying, as opposed to cramming. And I believe this tool offers that opportunity for students who are procrastinators, and who prefer a certain way of presenting materials to them. Yeah. So that now we're talking about UDL, Universal Design Learning, and that type of thing. Dermot, you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much. This does look very interesting. Is always the concern, though. A few days ago, I was utilizing Copilot, a different product, no doubt, generative AI, however, and Microsoft Copilot didn't even know how to utilize um, their tools to modify forms. They suggested I use Excel, and 45 minutes later, I realized they were wrong. And then, of course, with most of these tools, when you note to them they're wrong, they say, "Oh yeah, right, of course." So, like, I think this tool has utility, but if the students are students and they don't have enough subject mastery, they might be lie up. There might be a confabulation or hallucination they don't know to, and they're then going to utilize that to prep. So
Yeah.
there probably has to be some kind of, warning to them to be like, even if all the data is super curated, the mechanisms in generative AI could still lead to hallucinations and confabulations.
That's a great point, Dermot. As I understand as I understand, Notebook LM is pretty much cut off from the internet, but as long as you have the knowledge that you built, but still you're bringing stuff in that might be misinformation and et cetera. Yes, that's a big concern. So I think that's a valid and excellent point. And so this is why it's good as I can see this working in groups. I can also see where maybe a professor owns the notebook so that you still provide that oversight and you're still involved in the process and you're overseeing what's going on because many of the time students are going to be bringing in false information into that. As we all see, preconceived misconceptions are always the case, right? And these are areas where we always target our when students bring up these misconceptions and they bring it into the classroom, and you always have to address them in front of everyone, or else you're gonna it could snowball into. So yeah, those are still big concerns. Thank you, Dermot, for bringing that up. Um, Real quick, I do want to cover the new feature that we have is the slide deck, and like I said, this is the first time I'm opening it, so let's take a look together. And so the slide deck feature icon looks almost like a screen, or like a PowerPoint slide. So that's this one right here, and that's the one that's a new feature that was added since we last met on the first parts of this series. So let's go ahead and open it up and see how that looks like. Okay. So pretty much, it looked like a PowerPoint slide with visuals. Um, Pretty amazing. I mean, let's hit the play button. Let's see what this this looks closer with a closer look. Okay, I mean, I'm looking for spelling errors, or again, like Dermot mentioned, I'm looking, again, looking for some um, wrong data. I wish it would have some type of citation as to where it was finding the information from the sources that I added to the brain. I don't think there is. There might not be any citations here, or maybe I'm missing it. But I mean, from the look of this is pretty professional looking. I mean, look at that. It did this graphic here on the reality of a diverse classroom. So these are some of the materials that I added to the knowledge base, and so that's what it's grounded on. I'm pretty impressed. I mean, again, this is the first time I'm opening the slide deck feature, and it looks pretty cool. Now, I wonder, now again, this is another idea, like our last meeting, we talked about, I wonder what's next. Now I'm thinking now if you combine the slide deck feature with the voiceover text or voiceover slides. So I wouldn't be surprised that maybe by next week or so we're going to see voiceover on the slides. Because you already have the audio, right, as a podcast, and we also have audio from the explainer videos. Why not now add audio to the slide deck? Yeah, so this is really impressive. Really impressive. And like I said before, we're only seeing Google continue to put their efforts into Notebook LM because we're seeing new features almost every week. So that's really fun to see. I wanted to take a pause and ask the room if anyone who had some ideas who attended part one and maybe went ahead and experimented with some of these features can jump in and maybe talk a little bit about how they used some of these assets to develop their course or to just inject some of this into their course design. And just wanted to see if anyone had come up with any ideas and how they were using it, not only in developing your courses, but maybe did you come up with any ideas on how to create new assignments? We talked a lot about different types of assignments last time. I mentioned, just to give some ideas before I open the room for any suggestions, I had come up with like the one we mentioned, the midterm or final review, where students where a professor can create a notebook just for the midterm review, invite all the students to then work on midterm review and in a way that it will helps them study for the midterm. Another idea that we had was for creating primary sources, maybe have students curate or in the part of the research paper, use it as a way to research that and bring it and curate knowledge into the notebook and then interact with the notebook to better or help them write that paper themselves. So it's a way of a research guide or a research assistant, you could say. And I'll say one more before we turn over, was we talked about students who can then use these notebooks to take notes in the classroom if the professor allows this for students to just have a notebook they is specific to that one course. Every time they create a note, it's ingested and saved into this knowledge base, and then students can use it again as a study guide or to go back and interact with the podcast and things of that nature. So these are some of the ideas that we talked about last time, against for studying, using the flashcards. So I'm just going to open it up to anyone. I don't want to be the only one here talking today, and just to hear your thoughts and ideas. So I open up the room for that. Anyone is interested in taking on the mic.
Can I ask a question, Jose? Is it
Sure.
possible?
Sure, yes, please do.
Sorry if my background's a little noisy. I just have a quick question for everyone here. What has been more effective using a notebook that I should know about? That's all. Thank you.
Sure. I gave my two. For me, I was again the ability for the explainer videos, and so real quick, unless someone else speak, but for me, when I went back here and I added my explainer video into my course, oh my goodness! I mean, for me, I was so surprised, and then also the feature where students can just raise their hand and interact based on the lecture notes that they took. I thought those two for me was my favorite. But anyone else want to jump in on that? I think there's some comments in the chat. Okay, so I see Ozen, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but I created a notebook for my introductions to political science class. I uploaded the readings, the videos, and links that I cover in my lectures. We covered 7 topics. Since the midterm, I asked the Notebook LM to give me 10 multiple choice questions per topic. I had to do some editing, but the result was fantastic. So interesting. Professor Ozen, we did talk about that in part one. I wasn't a big fan of the quiz feature, and I'll tell you why. For me, the reason I struggled with the quiz feature was that when you go back here into Notebook LM, and if I go back into the studio, I'll tell you why. I found another way to do this. But when you go to your quiz feature, it gives you some great questions, but the problem I had was I couldn't figure out how to take these quiz questions and bring them over into Brightspace. So there wasn't like an export feature And so, and the other problem I had was they're one at a time. I couldn't get them all at one time, so I can copy them all and then import them into Brightspace. So what I did was, and this is one of my other workshops. So if you did miss this one, you can also find it on our YouTube channel. What I did, and I explained it very clearly on that workshop. What I do is I either use for quiz creation, I use something like either Copilot or Gemini or Grok, any of those, and then I build a knowledge document, upload it to the chatbot, and then I ask it to give me, I don't know, 10, 20 questions based on the knowledge document that I have. But then what I do next is that I give it the format, the Brightspace format, in which Brightspace recognizes. If you don't know that format, you can go to one of these, and I don't want to eat up too much time on this, but and you can also watch this video, but you can also go to a Brightspace test generator and just Google it, and then you can just go to one of these Brightspace test generators. And then you'll have, Gemini or Copilot create 100 of these questions. And then what you do is you create an example of that question. That's the format that Brightspace understands. And you have to follow it to the dot to the it has to be exactly precise or else it will give you an error message. But as you can see, it has to have, let me zoom in, it's too small. But this is the Brightspace formatting, right? So what I did was I copied this and I copy the format, and in my prompt to ChatGPT or Copilot, I say, here's the document that I want you to build 100 questions for my question library in Brightspace. Give me 100 questions, use the following format, and then I copy that and then paste it into this generator and create a CSV file, and then I import all my 100 questions in one shot. That's why I like this method, because now these quizzes are inside Brightspace, whereas the notebook LM quizzes, I couldn't find a way to bring them into Brightspace and then go into the gradebook. But great question, Professor Ozen. I love that. We're all experimenting. Elizabeth is asking, is it 50 sources per notebook? Yes, it's 50 sources. Thank you, Professor Ozen, for answering that. And yes, there is a character limit. Thank you, Lizette, of 500,000 characters. Roberta is asking, is only the podcast shared? You could share just the podcast, or you can share the entire notebook. And within the entire notebook, you have all these 7 different features. Let me go back. So so if you go to Studio, you can individually share. Let's say you only want to share the slides. Let's do that now. We haven't done that yet since we just did it for the first time. I'm going to go to my slide deck, click on the 3 little dots on the right-hand side, and then you see how you have the share button. We click share. Again, you can control a few settings. For example, add a welcome note for users when they open the notebook. If you want to do that, you just click on that, and then you can type in here your welcome note to the students and say, this is Professor such and such, and these are my slides for today. Maybe you want to say, here are the slides before we meet in person today. So you can review the slides and you can write a little welcome note here for your students so they can prepare and read the slides before we get to the classroom. Then at the bottom, you can say anyone with the link can access, or you can say restricted, right? So then here, if you do restricted, what you can do is you can individually add the students' Gmail addresses. And this is what we talked about in part 1. You have to be very careful because we can assume that everyone has a Gmail account, but that's not true, right? So you have to make sure, and maybe ask your class and make sure that, does everyone have a Gmail account? Because otherwise they won't be able to participate. So you can individually add your class members through here, or you can just say anyone with the link can access, right? And then here at the bottom, what do they have access to, right? Is it the full notebook or just only the chat? And then once you've done with your settings, you click copy the link, and then we go back into Brightspace. We click create. We do create a link. And I'm going to call this one module 1 lecture slides. And then I'm going to paste that link, click create. And I'm going to go back into my folder. We see the slides are here now, module 1 lecture slides. I'm going to go ahead and, well, let's look at it from the student perspective. I'm going to switch over to view as learner. We're going to go back into the content area. Here is my module 1 lecture slides. I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. And it takes me directly right here. And so the students can then, well, I'm logged in. So it might be a different view for the student since I'm already logged into my account, but then they click play. And then let me minimize this window here. And then now they're in the slides and they can change the slides as they click, just like a PowerPoint slide. And I won't be surprised if maybe by the next time we meet in spring, there are going to be audio over the voiceovers for you already on these slides. So this will be great for those who teach online asynchronous courses because here at City Tech, we do online certifications. And we use the Oscar rubric, right, for online certifications. And one of the things that's required for online asynchronous courses is to have slides, but not just slides. There has to be voiceover because I feel that just providing slides to our students, they're missing the in-between. There has to be a professor to speak and explain what those slides are there. So sometimes these are just talking points, but having voiceover is very crucial and very important for students to understand the slides. All right, I see there's many more questions. Or anyone want to jump on the mic, please do go ahead. But I'm looking here too as well in the chat.
Okay, Jose,
Yes.
it's Roberta Kilkenny. Hello, and thank you.
Sure.
I watched the recording from your first session, and I would encourage anyone who was not there to look at the recording because it was really interesting. I raised my hand because I wanted to mention an assignment I'd given to my students. But before that, can you just go back to the first page of the slideshow?
Oh, yes, I can do that.
The first page. Okay. Because you had mentioned that there are no citations and you would like to see citations, but on the first page, it's not a formal citation, but it does say that it's based on this particular resource.
Great catch. I completely missed it. And honestly, this is the first time I'm opening the slide deck feature. And thank you for pointing that out because you're right. Bottom, based on the guide by Maddie Ferrer, avid cycle, and that is one of the source. That is one of the sources that I added to. Yeah. So okay, that's pretty. Thank you, Roberta, for pointing that out.
Now, this is the first I'm seeing it also, so I just noticed it when you pulled up the slide deck. I have no idea what it would do if it was based on two sources, but we'll see.
Yeah.
The assignment I wanted to mention, it was spread over 2 weeks. In the first week, my students had to use one of the typical databases, whether it was Google Scholar or JSTOR or whatever, to find 5 sources on the topic that they were researching, to write summaries in their own words on those 5 resources. They did not know during week 1 that I was going to tell them to use Notebook LM in week 2 because I didn't want anyone jumping the gun. But in week 2, they had to pull in those sources and ask Notebook LM to do the summaries and then compare the summaries that they wrote to the summaries that Notebook LM prepared. A few of the students said that Notebook LM summaries touched on things that they hadn't touched on in their summaries, and they found that useful. One student said he was dissatisfied with Notebook LM summaries because he felt it was not sufficiently analytical,
Mm.
right? So if let's say you used an article that said, what a practical guide to scaffolding, and the article talked at great length about four aspects and only mentioned the fifth aspect briefly. The summary, he felt, gave equal weight to each of those things, right? So he was dissatisfied with that and felt that the summary that he wrote was better because he felt it was more analytical. Um, so I found that interesting. I use Notebook LM a lot, both in terms of helping me in preparing my own weekly modules, but also showing the students some of the best ways to use it. And I prefer Notebook LM because whether it's ourselves as faculty or the students, provide the resources, and it's not going out to the great virtual universe, and that helps in part to minimize the number of hallucinations. I wouldn't say it prevents any and all, but it minimizes it. And it
Yeah.
also helps the students because the students are doing the initial research to identify the resources. And
Right.
then Notebook LM will help them to figure out, are their resources broad enough? Is there bias? How do they deal with the bias? Is because the resources themselves may not be comprehensive enough or whatever. So I like it for that it's not, you're not just going out there and asking it to produce something and
Right.
then, submitting that as the be all and the end all of what you want to say about your research topic. But there's a lot of back and forth, between the user and Notebook LM to create a better end product.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Roberta. And you know what? I'm going to challenge you, Roberta. For the next assignment, why not split up the class into groups and let's debate? But in the process of debating, they have to they have to bring in these sources that back their argument. And so you have students with different, positions in an argument, and each one of them wants to win the argument. So they have to build a strong argument based on the sources they bring into. And so students who are in the opposite, or the are debating against your group, they can you can open up the podcast so that the group that's debating against the your team will then jump in and ask questions and debate against the podcast that was created by the other team. That came to mind as you were describing your scenario. I would be interested to see if anyone can try that, and see if we can create groups that develop their own podcast, and then students will interact and raise their hand, as I was raising my hand, to debate against what the podcast is saying. So you're basically going to argue with whatever that group, is arguing against, right? So I'm curious to see maybe something like that. If you can come back and tell us if or any other way that come up. But I'll be interested to see how we can create debate bots or debate notebooks.
I'll give it some thought. It's a bit complicated for me because my courses are asynchronous.
Oh, okay.
So group projects are
Yeah.
sometimes not what students want to do because it
No,
doesn't have
definitely.
that
Asynchronous
same
is another whole level.
flexibility.
Yeah,
But
asynchronous courses, yeah, are completely another.
yeah, but I do want to mention, I haven't tried it yet, but I understand now with the podcasts that you can, when you put in how you want Notebook LM, I'm talking about it like if it's a human being, how you want them, how you want the podcast to be structured, you can tell it that
Yes.
you want a debate, right? And the two people there, my virtual people, will debate one another about the topic that's being discussed, rather than just a straight kind of summary that sounds exciting.
Yes, we did take a little bit. We did talk a little bit about that in our first workshop, and thank you for plugging the recording. If you did miss it, you can always go back into our YouTube channel and find it there. But the other setting that we talked about is somewhere here in the middle screen, I would say, and there is a little configure icon there, configure the notebook. I didn't get a chance to experiment much with it, but I feel maybe that here you can control a little bit more as to how long, longer, or shorter. And then also you can define the conversational goal, style, or role by clicking on custom. And then here you can just prompt it and say, respond at a PhD level, or, pretend to be role play. Here, what I would do with my debate, my debate idea, I would say here, you are debating against this other team. You have to win at this argument and do your best to answer all questions correctly. So here you can type those prompts to customize it a little more. There were a few other questions I saw here. Someone asked a question. Can you please break?
I have a question, Olivera. I see Roberta, you guys from Mia from Hunter College. Thank you guys. I have a question. I didn't use yet notebook for my students, but I'm doing for myself, doing research, and now I'm putting website on Google Sites and using notebook link for this interactive learning experience. And my question is to you, I just discovered notebook recently, maybe 5 months ago, and I would like to know when I share that link to anyone who would like to utilize my notebook, does it mean the person can jump in all the notebooks that I have, or just a specific one that I send link to?
Oh, yes, it's specific to the notebook that you shared.
I
Great
see.
question. Yes, they will only be able. So it's individually, each notebook, when you share each notebook.
Yes. Oh, I see. Awesome. That's something very nice. And one more thing, quick. I will be quick. When I have this like audio response podcast, and then you can join. That's kind of cool feature. I really like that. But I would like to know how can I see that you have configuration that you can make shorter response. So can I somehow edit audio if I don't like everything they said, and I would like to trim it, because I've noticed like a mixed salad if I have a lot of sources I don't like that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's one of the features I've been asking
Oh yeah?
Google for a while. That's the one that's a big one, right? Because now we can really customize. And for me, again, I mentioned earlier that I come from a media production background. That to me would be amazing, because then I can really, with precision.
Exactly. Yeah. It drives me nuts because I don't want everything they said. Because they will mess up. And I said, no, that's not what I wanted. So they will say, I will ask just funny question. Who am I? Oh, okay. We don't know who you are. We cannot get that source, but we can tell you a little bit about identity. And they will just completely hallucinate. I said, that's not what was in these sources. So I will try to see if I can somehow trim that audio, but I guess I can, right?
Yes, if you're experienced with video editing, I saw there was a question there was a similar question on the chat, but if you're experienced with video editing, even now that we at CUNY now have Adobe Express, or depending on what level you are as a video editor, there are some tools.
I am beginner.
Oh, you're beginner. So I would recommend experimenting with Adobe Express. It's simple. This is Adobe's little brother to then the big products like Adobe Premiere. So these do not require the steep learning curve that you would need in a big tool like Premiere, Photoshop. And so Adobe Express does allow you the ability to edit a video. So if you download the podcast,
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
can then take that MP4 file. Let me show you real quick. So for example, now remember, you lose the interactivity
Oh.
right, of asking the question. But you could edit the video if you did want to. And I did see a similar question by somebody here who said, and I think Lizette answered it, is there a way to incorporate Google Slides to PowerPoint? That's a fantastic question because now you had the notebook create the slide deck for you, but you want to edit the slides in PowerPoint? Excellent question, Professor Altman. So that, again, I can see where our minds are going with this. This is perfect because this shouldn't be it shouldn't stop here, right? The modifications of these assets can continue and you can improve on them, tinker with them, make them better. So I hope Google eventually will allow us to take these slides, these videos, and these audios, and then continue to modify them with precision.
What about what I've noticed, what I discovered? Since I said too many, I had too many. If you have too many sources, then it's like audio is messing up.
Mhm.
But what I noticed, if you narrow down to a specific topic, then you can somehow trim that. That's what I've noticed that you can do, right? Or is it possible?
I love that you said that because, again, it goes back to the point that we made earlier is that look how many, I mean, you can make so many books, right? And so I always fight against the hoarding mentality of just putting everything in, it's like a data dump. We call
So
it.
true. I agree.
And one of
Thank you so much.
No, this is a great question. Another feature, which I would love eventually for Google to incorporate would be now that you have, let's say, a notebook on a specific narrow topic, then here I have another specific narrow topic. But eventually, I would love to have this notebook interact with another notebook and make a bridge or a connection. That
Oh, that's cool.
that
Wow.
would be right. That would be another fantastic idea. Um, since you were sharing, I would love to share, for those of you who don't know, this is an excellent website. If you're not aware, please take some time and visit the Google Labs. It's you can pretty much go there from if you type in Google Labs or if you go labs.google/experiments or just Google Labs and it'll take you here. But there's a lot of experiments that Google is playing around with. And so this is where Notebook LM first came up. This is where I found when it was first on beta, I saw it here and I was like, oh, what's this? But you can see there's a lot of tools. And there's one that I wanted to point out real quick before we kind of summarize our workshop today. But the one that if you are someone who is learning how to prompt and you're trying to perfect your craft on prompting, which I think we're all are trying to, I'm always trying to get better at prompting. I'm not the best. And so there's two here that I want to show you that are really cool. And it basically shows you an image and then it asks you to prompt what that image is and try to recreate the image based on the prompt. So it's a nice activity and it's over here somewhere if I can find it. As you can see, there's many. But let me see, maybe I search. But if you go in here, look on your own, and there's many really cool experiments that Google is playing with. And if you look for the one that is for prompting, and I should have had it ready for me, but I didn't know I was going to go here. But please make sure to visit Google Labs and just see what's going on because as we all know, this technology is moving very fast. It's very quick. And as you know, every week there's something new happening. Um, so there was one more quick question that I saw here. I just want to address that question. It was on, okay. Okay, I think I answered all the questions in the chat.
Are we able to get recordings of this? This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure, yes. And you can find, yes, all of the workshops have been recorded. And if you go to our YouTube channel, and if you search on YouTube, let me see, I think you should find it on City Tech A2 Atoll, A2L. And
It's in
then,
the chat. I added the link in the chat
oh,
if anybody needs it.
perfect. Thank you, Lizette. So you can find us either to the link in the chat, or you can just Google us or just search us in YouTube, and then you'll see A2L. And if you click on our logo, you will see that we have a playlist. And in that playlist, we have one that's is all about the elevatED workshops. And then you can see, for example, the one that Professor Ozen was talking about, which is the how to create a library of quizzes and questions. And also the part one recording is here as well. As you can see it here, workshop designing assignment with Notebook LM. So you can find us there, and make sure to subscribe, because then you'll just get notified once we add the videos, because it does take a little bit of time for us to edit and just, make the video, clean it up a little bit, and then we post it here. So this is where you can find us. So thank you, Lizette. Lizette posted that in the chat. I'm just gonna, put it out there for anyone. Call to action, because I always love to, it's great to attend these workshops and just to be there and just listen, but also there's always the opportunity for you to go ahead and play with the tool. And so if you find that Notebook LM is a tool that you can see helping you, or you can see leveraging it into your classroom or your style of teaching, please let me know, and let me, send me an email. My email address is, let me put it back here. It's so everyone can see. My email address is basically jose.diaz944@citytech.cuny.edu. And if you have any ideas, just shoot them out, because I think, what we all need to do right now in the situation that we are, since everything is moving so fast, we got to share ideas with each other and help each other out, because it's so hard to do it alone. There was a great workshop at CUNY, Don't AI Alone. And so that's really the mentality that we all need to do, is help each other out. So I'm always happy to share what I'm working on. I'll be happy to share any ideas. It's just so that we can build a community of practice and help each other out, because honestly, it's racking my brain every week with all the new things that are happening. Is very difficult to do on my own. So this is the reason why I like to do these workshops, is so we all can share and help each other out. So with that, if there's any other questions or any comments, please play with it, break it. Don't worry, you're not going to get in trouble. And maybe for the spring semester, you'll be ready to experiment it with your spring class, and then we can come back here and talk about how it went, just like Roberta was able to share her student experiences with us. I think that's fascinating. But just to have it available to students to try it out, even though there was one student who didn't like it, just the experience of them actually doing something with AI that's not just focused on AI, but the subject matter that you're teaching. And that's the challenge, is to bring AI, but not to take over the entire class, because remember, at the end of the day, it's really the subject matter that we're teaching. So with that, I thank you for joining us today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you have a restful holiday, and also that the finish line is around the corner, and so stay strong. We're almost there, everyone.
Jose, excuse me, can you just share with us this file that you have, this like presentation and PDF? Can you drop it here in chat?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
I have everyone who registered. I have your email, and so what I do after every workshop, I do a summary email,
Oh, okay.
and that email includes the PowerPoint slides. It includes the recording. It includes any of the important links that we talked about. So you're gonna get all of that in the email.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you
Learn
for
a lot. Thank you.
thank you for joining, and thank you all for those who shared. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.